Okay guys, so welcome back to Melodyne. Let's jump straight into it. Okay, now there's two ways that I would normally do this. Okay, in terms of opening and setting up Melodyne. I'm just going to show you the first way, which is really simple. Now, what I would suggest you do is you create a new audio channel. Okay, the reason being, I'll explain this as we go. I'm going to call it Melodyne. The reason being is because I may want to Melodyne more than one thing. Okay, so rather than having to add Melodyne as an effect to all of these different vocals, I'm going to create a Melodyne channel, and so every time I want to affect something, I'm just going to drag it in, do what I need to, and once it's ready, copy it back out and then stick it back. Okay, leaving the channel free essentially. So I'm going to bring that back in here. I'm going to come over to my effects and I'm going to add Melodyne in. Where are you, Melodyne? You hide, sir. Okay, so add Melodyne. Wait for it to open. Now this is Melodyne's window. This is its editor window. Okay, and as you can see on the left, it's flashing with this transfer option. So we're going to make sure that's selected. And now what we're going to do is we're going to print our vocal into Melodyne. Okay, Logic's built-in flex pitch is great. Obviously we looked at that in the video before. In this instance, it doesn't just read like Logic's does. We have to actually print it in. It's kind of like real time. So it's like pressing play on the tape and actually playing it back in. Okay, so this is how we're going to get it in. We've clicked the transfer button and now we're just going to play over the region until it copies into Melodyne. Okay.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we build our pride. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind, let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind.
Okay, cool. So now it's going to transfer all of this in so we can now bring it up and edit it. Okay, fantastic. So let's have a closer look. Now to zoom in, it's slightly different. You'll need to press the Command and Alt buttons. Alternatively, you can do it down here, okay, using these options here in the corner, moving this up and down. But I prefer to use the zoom option like that because I feel like I've got slightly more control. Okay, so much like Logic's, it's given us all the notes here, okay, as these orange, ready areas here. And again, much like Logic, we can see the vibrato that Jamie's done with the lines. So if I zoom right in to one of these, or any of these for that matter, again, we know that this is the note, but we can see where Jamie's dipped into the note, slightly gone above the vibrato, and then gone down to the other note, so on and so forth. Okay, some of the notes you can see obviously extreme vibrato. Okay, so again, with this editing process, it's just slightly more neater really for me, and that's how I feel about it. I think it's slightly more neater. It does take slightly longer in all honesty, but I actually think it's slightly better. So to start, here is what I would do. We're going to select all. Now we're going to right click. This brings up all of our options, our tool options here. Okay, the main tool, the pitch tool, the formant tool, amplitude tool, timing tool, and note separation. We're not going to use all of these in this tutorial. We're just going to use some of them, but I'll go into what they do when we actually need them. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is select all. Okay, now I'm going to come up here and press correct pitch. Now the difference between this and Logic is that this actually allows us to do it in percentage. So we don't have to, for example, if I go there, if I go to 100%, what that does, much like Logic, is it puts it perfectly on each note. Okay, Melodyne recognizes that sometimes perfect computer talk isn't necessarily perfect in human terms. Okay, it tries to give you the option to keep it more natural. So what I tend to do is I go 50%. That means kind of half Jamie, half Melodyne. Neither are too extreme. Okay, and I'm going to do the same with the correct pitch drift. Okay, which, as we discovered in the Logic, really is the vibrato that kind of hangs between notes and the way notes drift in and out of each other. So again, bear in mind, Melodyne is a sensitive program. 50% is not too much. It's in my opinion, it's just about right. So I'm going to click OK. Okay. Now what that's done, as I said before, is it's just moved them probably about 50% into alignment with each note. So it's kind of left us a little bit of room for maneuvering. So I'm going to right click again and I'm going to select my main tool. Okay, now to move notes in here, if I just click on them, I have to move the note in its entirety. In other words, it's, as you can see, it's minus 17 points off of being a perfect F note. Okay. Now, if I move it up its entirety, again, it's now minus 17 points being off a perfect G note. Okay. So to fine tune this, what we need to do is press the Alt key, and we can move it up to a perfect note. Okay, if we want to. So again, we're gonna play through this. Now, bearing in mind that playing through this is slightly different now because we don't have the option of just seeing it in the edit window below. So we now need to just click behind,
like the stars,
and then we'll go through as we did before.
Like the stars, like the stars, I leave you. Like the stars, I leave you with it all, with it all. Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing.
Now, in this instance, we'll come back to this actually, but even as I click it, you can hear how Jamie's climbed up to the note. Okay, so when I play that actually through, it doesn't sound quite right.
I leave you standing tall.
Neither does that, and I feel that is the right note, but we'll come to that later when we edit the vibrato.
I leave you standing I leave you standing tall. I leave you standing tall. We build a I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Rise above. Above we build our pride. Rise above. Above we build our rise above. Above we build our pride. Below our fears will hide. With this,
That's another interesting instance. This, I feel that this note needs to be separated, but again, we'll come back to that. We're trying to develop process here. Okay, so let's keep going.
hide. With it, hide. Hide. With this in mind. Hide. With this in mind. Hide. With this in mind. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Ride with this in mind. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind.
Okay, so in the instance of these parts, that part and this part, it's just the end of the notes, and it didn't even sound really out, to be honest with you. It's just Jamie's vibrato. That's all it really was.
Ride with this in mind. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind.
Okay, cool. So that's pretty much the moving of the notes one by one as we've gone through. But now we need to go back to the beginning and really start to look at some of the other editing tools which are going to make this slightly easier for us to make this vocal clean. Okay, so let's go back in.
Like the stars,
Okay, so first and foremost, this seemed too much for me. Okay, so what we're going to do, come here over to the pitch tool. We right click and we bring up our tools. Then I'm going to go down to pitch modulation. Now, when I click on the note, all I have to do is drag down in order to decrease or increase, of course, by dragging up the amount of vibrato on the note, okay?
like the stars, like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave all Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you stand.
Okay, cool. So this is a good instance now to change the tool again.
Leave you stand. Oh, I leave you.
So that's where Jamie built up again that we mentioned earlier. Yeah. So first and foremost, let's just try and move it up first.
Oh, I leave you standing.
Didn't actually sound too bad. Let's just bring that down.
Oh, I leave you standing.
Okay, now here.
Oh, I leave you standing tall.
So in this instance, I've brought this down because I can hear that it is supposed to be an A, but obviously the vibrato has actually made it slightly sharper. I actually remember moving this note up myself because it was down here on G sharp. But again, by moving it up, it's probably made it sharp because the vibrato's pushed it slightly above. So we just bring it in a bit, you know, just in a bit. What we're not trying to do is flatten it out. Okay, we still want it to be natural, and if it goes above slightly, that's fine. But again, what we're trying to do is just reduce those discrepancies, okay?
Oh, I leave you standing tall. Tall.
Bit of a wobble.
Oh, I leave you standing tall. Tall. Oh, I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we build our pride. Below our fears will.
Undo that. And bring that note back down. Now, what you will have to get used to in Melodyne is switching between the tools, okay? Because instantly, in that case, I wanted to bring that down, but I was still stuck on this pitch modulation tool. So what I ended up doing was actually reducing the vibrato, and I didn't actually want to do that. So just be aware that you've got to consistently be okay with changing between your tools, okay?
Below our fears will hide. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind. Below our fears will hide. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind.
Okay, a little bit sharp.
Below our fears will hide. With this in mind. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind.
Okay, so that seems pretty cool to me. Let's have a listen to that in its entirety and just check any last bits that we
Like
missed
the
out.
like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of.
Okay, cool. So this is probably an instance where we can use our note separator tool. Okay, so we're going to come up here, right click again, and then come up to where it says note separation. Okay, now when we click this on, these vertical lines, which are coming down, represent where the note starts and where the note ends. So even in this instance where it may look like it's one note, we can actually see where the note is separate. Okay, now for some of these notes they're fine, but you may be dealing with some of these where again we're looking at an instance where, you know, the singer in this case, Jamie in this case, if we zoom in on this note, she's actually started vibrato wise pretty low. She's actually started on a G and she's resolved touching on a sharp. So that's almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's almost 5 notes in this one section alone. Okay, so let's just find that.
Like the star, we build a bridge of. Leave you stand. Oh, I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we.
Okay, so
Above we build. Above we build. Above we.
so in this instance, It's pretty short. It's a pretty short note, so we're not really going to hear the massive difference. But in your case, if this is a really long note, this is really going to be very beneficial. So what we want to do with the note separation here, in order to align these two, in order to make this one note consistently as opposed to a huge dip, okay, is we're going to click where the note, the vibrato, leaves the note. Okay, in this instance, it's right here. Double click. Now, you can see as soon as I've done that, it's moved it to this note down here. It's now separated it and said, actually, recalculating everything, it was actually supposed to be this note here, but I couldn't make the choice, so I left it here and allowed the vibrato to go up. Okay, so that's our first indication of how we can tidy some of these small parts in the vocal up, okay? And that, again, is to select our separator tool, okay, and to double click where the line leaves the note. Okay, now I haven't got many examples of this inside this particular vocal because Jamie is a great vocalist. Okay, simple as that. But you may find in instances like this, now if I click here, that although the line has separated, it's also aware that the line has come back down and it's just a bit of vibrato. So you're really looking at these instances where the line is completely separate and never comes back. Okay, so in this instance, although it started here, if I click here again, you can see that it said, all right, it's maybe not that note. Maybe she intended to start down there. Okay, in this instance, it's not. So I'm going to undo that. Let me just say on a side note, to undo anything inside here, click on the arrows. I have found in some instances when you press undo, as you normally would in Logic, actually what you're going to undo is something that's happened in this window here. Okay, so be sure to undo things in Melodyne the right way, or to redo, of course, by clicking the other arrow there. Okay, so let's go back to this note here where we've separated, and let's just play that through. Okay, so what I want to do is I actually want to even that note out. This could be right. In your song, it can be right, and it may be where the note is supposed to start. First and foremost, I want to bring that down. I'm also going to take some of that vibrato off the high end. Now that actually sounds okay to me, okay? The fact that she's gone up into the note is fine, and that's very natural. Generally speaking, as human beings, whenever we speak, really subtly, whether you notice it or not, because oftentimes we speak with quite a pace, but whether you notice it or not, we actually climb to our notes when we speak. And particularly when we sing, we often climb there because where we're trying to hit and where we start are two very different places. So it's perfectly natural for a singer to do this. If I were trying to even this out, of course, what I'd do is just click on that and bring it there. Let's see how that sounds. Now, to me, that no longer sounds natural. Okay, and this is exactly what this tool is for. Decided that perfectly sitting on the note to me doesn't sound natural. So we're going to go back and have the climb back into it.
Above we build our pride, below our fears will hide. With this in mind, let's rise above, let's rise above, let's rise above, let's rise above.
Okay, so now one of my issues really, just to sort of summarize this part, is to take some of the vibrato off of these last parts that Jamie's singing. Every time I hear the rise, it sounds like I can hear a real wobble in the end, okay?
Let's rise above.
Okay, so I'm just going to take some of the wobble, the vibrato out of the ends of the word rise.
Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind, let's rise above. 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 With this in mind, rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind.
Okay, cool. So now let's just have a listen through. Make sure we've got everything where we want it.
Stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we build stars. I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we build our pride. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind, let's rise above. Stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We
was actually quite happy with that. So what we'd do really at this stage is, again, listen through again till you're 100% happy. Okay, there's no need to shortcut anything at this stage. All right, and even visually, to be honest with you, right now I'm just visually making these, just correcting some of these things just visually. That's all. Again, bear in mind that Melodyne is a sensitive program. Okay, and that's the whole point of this. It's not trying to ruin your vocals, but you can ruin your vocals with it. So just be careful. Take your time with it. Go through. That's the whole point. This is a process. Okay, but I'm generally happy. But again, play through from the top. Go right back to the beginning. Play over any bits that you're unsure of. And then once you're happy, then you're ready to export. Okay, and only at that stage are you ready to export. So now I'm going to say that I'm happy with this vocal. Let's just play through one more time just to be sure. And actually what I'm going to do in this instance is I'm going to close Melodyne, because oftentimes the distraction is visual. Sometimes I'm actually seeing things which make me feel that it's gone wrong rather than hearing what it should be. So it's always essential to hear the music first and foremost. Okay, before we take the visual aspects, before we even take the processing of what Melodyne's power is in this, in this big world of music production and vocal production, we just want to hear the music. All right, and we just want to hear how it sounds. So I'm just going to hear how this sounds.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we build our pride. Below our fears will hide. With this in mind, let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. Let's rise above. With this in mind.
Great. Okay, so to me that's cool. Now what I would suggest is you get this right. Okay, it is a process. It does take a while, and obviously maneuvering in and out of all of Melodyne's tools can be quite difficult at times. All right, and it does take a little bit of processing. You will find it fidgety. Being able to zoom in, zoom out from where you are is a little bit fidgety. You will find using this tool thing becomes slightly annoying at times. Okay, but bear in mind that these tools are here to help you, and that you'll get used to using them in time. You'll also get used to what you need and what you don't need. Obviously, I haven't touched on everything in here simply because I find that I don't really use the other tools. There are instances, maybe particularly where I use the pitch drift tool, which of course is the difference between two notes and how you want to drift into the two notes. So if I zoom in here just to take a look, see, so we can see here. Okay, it deals with the beginning and endings of notes, so we can tidy up how these notes relate to each other. Okay, for example, if Jamie was singing two different notes, an F sharp and a G, I may want to align it so it happens smoother. Okay, and that's what this tool's really used for. Amplitude I don't really use, because obviously we've addressed this in the comping stage, and you really should have recorded your vocals in the right way. But again, things escape the net sometimes. So amplitude just simply does that, deals with the volume of each note. Okay, so if you found, for example, maybe one of the breaths, and this is what I used to find in the earlier days, we will look into breath control, of course, but in the earlier days I used to find that the breaths were massively loud. Okay, and if you're finding that, then obviously just use your amplitude tool, find the breath and reduce it. Okay, reduce it, and that'll add wonders to the dynamics of your vocals and just making them that much clearer. Okay, so out of here now, what I then do, again, and this is why we used the extra channel for Melodyne as opposed to our original vocal channel. Okay, what I now do on this part is I right click on this part. I then go to bounce in place. Okay, and then I label it. I'm going to call it main vocal. Okay, and then I hit enter. Okay, once I've done that, once it's bounced all the regions in place, it then creates me a new vocal. As you can see, it's been labeled there. I can now either move my vocal up to where it was, in this instance back on this channel, but for now I'm actually going to leave that there. I'm going to keep that as my main vocal. Now what we can do, once you're happy and once you're set, you then come here and just remove it. You don't have to delete it if you don't want to, because again, the reason why I wouldn't advise deleting these parts in particular is because if anything's gone wrong, if you've heard something that's slightly not right later down the line, you may want the original piece. Okay, and I'm just saying that because it's happened to me. You know, I've decided Melodyne is cool. Half an hour later, something's come up which maybe I didn't hear, and now I need to go back to the original, and I don't want to have to use this again because this will have the problem on it, whereas the original won't. Okay, now what I would say is that you will lose the data if you've done this correctly, because what will happen is if we go into Melodyne, we can still see all the data's there, even though I've removed the part. Okay, and I moved the part here. Okay, so the data is still there. So what we need to do is we need to select all and we need to delete that data. Okay, what that now means is that there is no data there, and if we put this piece back there, we have to then, you know, go about the same thing again, transfer and copy back in. Okay, and the reason why we've done this is because obviously this is our main vocal. The next stage is to now take our duplicate vocal, which is here.
Like the stars, I leave you with it.
Okay, which actually still has our by the sounds of it, has our some of our auto tune still on there. Yeah, it does. It's still bust to the auto tune channel. So let's just take it back out. Okay, and again, we're just going to repeat the process. It's really that simple. So we take this and we bring this up to our Melodyne channel. Okay, go to Melodyne, open it up again, click that transfer button there. Okay, transfer button there, and then transfer in again.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above.
Now, I'm just going to stop there. Okay, I want to just explain now why this process becomes even more important. Partly because we've already done one of these vocals. Okay, this is a duplicate. This isn't a harmony or anything at this stage. This is a duplicate. Okay, now the reason why this is important is because if we feel that we've already got it perfect in this take, in the main vocal take, which is just behind here, if we already feel that we've got it perfect on this particular take, then essentially what we want to do is keep this take playing in the background. Okay, and we want to align everything else that's now in this new take that we've got in Melodyne here. We want to align that to what we're hearing here. Okay, so to do that, obviously the simple process is to keep this vocal playing, potentially slightly softer in the background, slightly quieter in the background, have this one on so we can hear it, and then we align to it.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all.
Okay, so immediately let's go, but let's repeat the process as we did before we go any further. Okay, so select all, come up to here, correct pitch. Again, this is up to you, but this is what I'm going to do here. You can just start manually. You can go to 100% if you want, but again, you're going to find the same issues with the Logic pitch flex with that you may have gone too extreme on it. Okay, so I'm just going to go to 50% on both, as we did before, and prepare to make my changes as I go. So let's hear this.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all.
Okay, so that actually sounds fine. The first sentence sounds fine. I mean, I know that I can still just trim it up and shape it up. There's nothing wrong with that. But this note here is where I heard an immediate discrepancy. Okay, so let's hear it through.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all.
Okay, that note is obviously flat. Okay, so we're going to move that up. Now, just from hearing the vocal I did before, I can tell you that's flat for that reason alone. So it's really, really useful to have the other vocal playing in the background, because things like this now, you can move a lot quicker on the second vocal simply because you can hear it.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. You
Now, again, because I've already done the vocal on the first one,
tall.
I'm moving slightly quicker. I'm not really guessing as much because I've already know how the melody goes now, and I'll play through and obviously correct any discrepancies as we go.
Like the stars, I leave you with it all. I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's.
Right, so a few issues there. Let's just hear that back.
Oh, we build a bridge.
And bring down the vibrato.
Oh, we build a bridge of love.
This note is flat.
Oh, we build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Up.
Okay, so let's just hear that from the beginning, just to be sure that we got that right.
Like the stars, I leave you with it. Oh, I leave you standing tall. We build a bridge of love. Let's rise above. Above we.
Okay, so again, it's just repeating the process and repeating the process until you've got all the vocals, Melodyne and compt as you want them. Okay, now bearing in mind, again, this is slightly easier because this is a second, and I've got a second and a third vocal. Okay, so again, if I had done the whole thing, I'd go to bounce in place. I'd call it maybe BV1, backing vocal 1, of course. Okay, and then I'd obviously bring that down into here. Okay, or as we did last time, simply keep it now and just drag that down. Okay, and we start to build as we go. You know, you can see what's happening here. We started getting on neater and stuff like that, so just bear in mind this kind of thing. I know that this is a copy and paste. All right, so essentially I know that I don't need that anymore, and I don't need that anymore, and I could literally bring these two and copy and paste them in here just like that. Okay, and that would be fine. Okay, now as I said, this is slightly easier because we've done a duplicate vocal. All right, but once we move on to the harmonies and certainly the octave lower,
like the stars, I leave you with it. Oh,
we're going to have to repeat the Melodyne process yet again. Okay, so that does explain the Melodyne for you. All right, so just repeat this process. It's going to be different with all of your vocal parts, but of course the process is the same. Okay, so you're going to bring open Melodyne. Again, inside this editing tool, it's very, very powerful, very, very sensitive. So be aware that moving around it does take a little while. As I said, it took me ages, to be honest with you. It took me ages just to be able to feel confident moving around it. I was probably editing vocals within about 20 minutes just fine. But again, in order to get smooth, in order to kind of combat the issues with it, you know, that does take a little bit of time, and much like most software, let's be serious, when it's all working for you, you can move pretty quickly. Getting better and speeding up at things really is down to how you deal with the issues, you know, how you deal with the problems. And obviously being in a studio, you know, I'm working here with a lot of pressure. Sometimes I do this with the vocalists in the room, sometimes I do it without them in the room. I'm telling you now, with them in the room, there's a lot more pressure because they're sat there right next to you. You are messing with their vocal, and obviously if you put a bum note in there and you put something wrong, they're going to look at you like you just ruined their song. Equally, you also have to take the blame for some notes that they did get wrong. You know, they're sat right next to you and they're like, I didn't sing it like that. And you have no choice to be like, okay, no, it's cool. Let me just keep working. Let me just keep moving. And, you know, and sometimes I've taken the blame for some terrible notes that a vocalist have done just because they're with me. So bear in mind that this is a process for you, but this is also quite a sensitive thing for your vocalist. So I would advise, you know, if you're new to this, don't do this with them in the room. Take some time out, tell them that you need to do what you need to do. Hopefully most of you are working on your own projects separately from them anyway at this stage. But that is something to bear in mind. Okay, so we're done here, guys. Well done for completing this Melodyne section. Let's move on to the next one. I'll see you over there.